Hello and welcome once again to yet another episode of TV Aftermath. I, of course, will be your host once again. I am part of the media Misfits. You may call me by the name Luke. And as you probably no doubt guessed from the title, today we are going to be talking about the second season of The Walking Dead. The first part of the second season, to be specific. And by the first part, I mean the first 7 episodes. In when The Walking Dead was a huge success as the first season, obviously it got another season order for it. Makes sense. And in the second season, there are a total of 13 episodes. When it aired on TV, it aired the first 7 episodes in one block in the fall, and then later on next year, it aired the last 6 episodes. I will be doing the first 7 episodes here as a block, and then later the next 6 episodes also as a block. And then when I get on to season 3, I will do something similar. Season 3 has 16 episodes. I'll do 8 episodes, and I'll do 8 episodes then. Nice and clean. Nice clean split. That's the way we like it. But back to the matter at hand. The Walking Dead season 2. In my opinion, The Walking Dead, the season 2 of The Walking Dead starts out very strong. It continues the plot of the first season. We see the consequences of the actions from the first season. We see the events of the first season have an effect on our characters, and we see our character dynamics begin to be more fleshed out as all the characters begin to get more and more fleshed out in their individual personalities and their individual characters themselves, for lack of a better word. In the first season, the focus was obviously on the three characters of Rick, Shane, and Lori. Here, the rest of the cast also begins to get much more focus. Because, as I stated in my first video, The Walking Dead is not so much about the zombies as it is about the people in it. The zombie apocalypse is just a backdrop for the interactions between the characters. And the interactions between the characters are the strength of this series. And thank goodness, because the character interactions are very good. But first, let's get into the backdrop, the plot, that to which all these different character interactions will play out. We start out with our characters leaving Atlanta. They just left the CDC center that blew up in that horrible CG effect. But anyway, the doctor there, he died. He had decided to commit suicide, and one of their members had stayed behind. I think her name was Jackie or something. I don't know. She barely had a character. She stayed behind because she chose suicide over living. And one of the characters actually becomes very important, who actually gets much more of a character in the second season, Andrea, and also Dale. Andrea had wanted to stay behind, had wanted to commit suicide as well, but Dale, the old man, had convinced her not to, or at least had basically forced her not to. Andrea had wanted to die because, you see, her sister had died earlier in the first season. And we again see the consequences of that effect as the character interactions play out. But as they're leaving Atlanta, on the freeway, they run into trouble, into a whole mess of road blockage. and when they encounter walkers, they lose the little girl, Sophia, with a nice sweet name, who was the daughter of Carol, who again had barely any character from the first season. So, even worse for her husband Ed, who died in the first season, and the only thing we got out of him was that he was an abusive asshole. But yeah, anyway, Sophia gets lost as a result of the walker attack, and that is one of the driving points throughout this first half of the season. Sophia is lost, and the characters are looking for her, or at least they're trying to look for her. There is an incentive to look for her, but there is conflict about this. I'll explain more in detail. Anyway, as they're looking for her, Rick and Lori's son, Carl, gets shot on accident by a hunter. The hunter takes them back to a farm, run by a guy named Herschel, an old man, a doctor who is basically doing his best to be a moral man in this ridiculously cruel world. He doesn't even view the Walking Dead, the walkers, as dead people. He views them as sick, as in need of help. This will play out. This will play out later. And there he basically takes care. He gets Carl all stitched up. Treats him. Shane has to go with the hunter to go make a run for supplies. And in the process, he shoots the hunter in the leg to leave him there to die because it was the only way to escape with the supplies from a horde of attacking zombies. And Shane did that, yeah, Shane. And this once again is a part of what I spoke about Shane's character earlier, the fact that he is the one who is generally more willing to do amoral acts, more willing to do what he feels is necessary, even though that might not be the quote unquote right thing to do. He basically believes that like morality is useless in this new world. That is one of the important themes that's one of the important character things that plays out here. And like I said, since Herschel doesn't view the people there as sick, oh wait no, and Lori is pregnant with a baby. I was gonna say with son or daughter, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure maybe it's explained maybe they tell us in the third season, maybe it's already been explained away in the comics. I don't know. I already told you I haven't read the comics, so I'm not the biggest dick. I have the comics, but I haven't read them. I've glazed through it, so I can't really tell you how well it compares to it. But anyway, Lori's having a kid, and she doesn't want to initially because as one of the things that plays out throughout the season is this idea of suicide, this idea of hopelessness in life. We see the effects of the suicide of Jenner and that one girl. I'll just call her the black girl because that's all I knew her as when she was on screen. But we see the effects of that. We see the effects on other characters. We see Andrea upset that she couldn't commit suicide. We see Lori wondering if it's worth it to live in this new life. Also upset at the thought that she's having a kid because she doesn't want a kid to grow up in this horrible environment. We see this idea of hopelessness play out, and it is one of the major themes of this first half of the season. And also, like I said, since Herschel didn't view the zombies as dead people, he kept them up in his barn. Oh, and by the way, just to note, of course the zombies were in the barn. In everything I've ever seen, in every form of media, whenever there is a barn at some place, do not go near the barn. That is where all the evil stuff is kept. That is where all the evil, dark, dead secrets are kept, and you do not want to be anywhere near it, because by God, it is going to bite you. In this case, literally. So Shane, once again, as we see, as a natural part of his character, goes completely nuts, like saying, "We gotta do what's necessary. We gotta do what's right. We gotta protect our people," and just completely goes nuts, forces the rest of them into like a shooting gallery of taking down all the walkers in there, while Herschel is basically watching, like horrified at what's going on. And then, of course, inside there, the last zombie they find is Sophia. And Rick shoots her, killing her, even though she was already dead. And that is how it ends, on that dark, bleak note of Sophia dead, after everything that they have been doing to try and find her. I like to call this first half of the season the Sophia arc. And the reason I do that is because it is focused like the main overriding thing of this is the search for Sophia. That is the impetus that eventually gets them to Herschel's farm, and that is what the characters are sort of focused on as an activity while they're there at Herschel's farm. And when it ends halfway through this season, they have found Sophia and she is dead. She is gone. And there is nothing they can do for her except to put her down. It is bleak. And this search for Sophia brings out a lot of things in the characters themselves. We see it brings up once again the conflict between Shane and Rick that, as I said before, was built up in season 1 but never really went anywhere. There was a scene which is brought up again where Shane had Rick right in his sights in a shotgun. He hadn't pulled the trigger, but he had been really mad at Rick, like thinking that Rick was making a stupid decision, and he had just kept him in his sights. He hadn't pulled the trigger, but he had just done that. Dale brought that up because Dale had seen it. And Dale basically pointed out to say to Shane, I know what kind of man you are. And we see, and again, like, I don't want to say like that Shane is a bad guy, because you can totally understand everything that he is saying, everything that he says needs to be done. You can totally get where he's coming from. And it's not like he's a bad person. He usually tries to do right. He usually does. He tries to help teach all the other characters how to shoot in order to help prepare them in case the zombie apocalypse. He tries to be nice enough to Carl. But at the same time, he is definitely much more of a vicious person. He is more willing to do what he feels is necessary than like what Rick usually is. He doesn't really believe you should try and hold on to morals and conscience as much as Rick constantly tries to do. But he isn't wrong, is the thing. And so the conflict arises naturally between him and Rick based on how they view things. It naturally comes through to that. And it works very well. And of course, that's not the only character stuff we have going on. We have character development we have character development of Glenn between him basically character development of Glenn along with one of Herschel's daughter, Maggie. We see a beginning of a relationship between them. We see Glenn sort of stepping up more, like maturing as a person. We see character development of Dale and T-Dog, like especially early on when they said like that like T-Dog was complaining about how it seemed like they both were useless in the group. We see some development in them trying to do their best to help out. We see development for Daryl. We see Daryl become like more and more of a sort of selfless person in his search for Sophia. He's the one most desperately searching for her. We see like a bit of a bond develop between him and Carol. And and there's a really nice moment when Daryl is out searching for Sophia. He has a hallucination of his brother Merle, basically taunting him, saying that why is Daryl searching so desperately for Sophia when he didn't even search for Merle, and mocking him for everything he's been doing, mocking him because he says that the rest of the group, they don't care about you. They just view you as redneck trash. And it's interesting looking to Daryl's character, and I sort of like the idea that one of the reasons why he was latching on so desperately to looking for Sophia was to try and make amends somewhat for having lost Merle. But yeah, good character stuff for Daryl. Good character stuff for Andrea, as she goes from initially contemplating suicide to wanting to live. Again, that's one of the main themes here, like suicide or Like, is it worth living in this world where there's essentially no hope? And another, also, let's see. No, I wanted to hit. No, I know there was something. I know there was like another one I wanted to hit here. Herschel. Herschel is an interesting character in his own right. They again, like, even though his view is wrong, he believes it so wholeheartedly. He believes that he doesn't believe that it's right to just kill the zombies, even though the rest of them are saying they're not alive anymore. He still views them as people, and it's an interesting thing. And it's interesting how it plays out, the conflict between him and Rick. It's never quite like as never flares like the one between Rick and Shane does, because like I said, Shane just has an awful temper, but it's definitely there and it helps drive things. But like I said first time around, there in the first video, there isn't much plot per se, but there is a lot of character stuff. There's a lot of dialogue between the characters. There's a lot of conflict amongst the characters. There's a lot of development for the characters. That is what the majority of each episode is focused on. Not so much the zombie apocalypse, but on the people involved in it. And I remember like when this first half of the season was coming out, some people were complaining about like the slow pace of it. I never had a problem with that because the first season is also really slow paced. This series is a very slow paced series. It has not too much plot to speak of. It's the zombie apocalypse and people are trying to survive in it. That's the basic plot outline. That's the basic plot basis. But the part that keeps you interested is all the character stuff. It is the character interactions are what moves the series. It's what keeps it alive. And as I said the first time around, with some of these things, they'll usually stick around in a single place for a while, and from there, all the actions will play out. Here, that single place was Herschel's farm, and I'm not entirely sure how long they stay in Herschel's farm in the comics, but I'm pretty sure they stay there a lot shorter than they do here. And I'm also pretty sure that Sophia doesn't get zombified in the comic version. Again, I could be wrong, but I'm just thinking. I'm thinking aloud right now. But I would be uncomfortable on commenting on whether or not this is a good adaptation, how good an adaptation this is, because, like I said, I haven't read the original comics. But as a standalone TV series, it is an excellent TV series, and I can't take anything away from it from that. The comics, I'm quite sure, are good too. I have always heard they're very good, and I know that the comics themselves are different from the TV show. Again, I don't have a problem with that. Changes have to be made, and the way I see it, the show is good. The show is fine. The show is great, in fact. No complaints from me if you change things, because quite frankly, the show still works. It still works very well. But yeah. Yeah, is there anything else left to talk about? Oh yeah. Now, another thing that seems to drive a lot of this idea is the idea of children in danger. Like that is like one of the main recurring themes. First you have Sophia getting lost, and then you have Carl getting shot. That is like what drove a lot of this, like especially Laurie's thoughts on if it was worth living in here. It's like that stuff. That is the main character stuff that drove a lot of these people. And again, the conflict between Rick and Shane, we again see it furthered here. And all the characters interactions become more and more definitive. With the conflict between Rick and Shane, Dale being uncomfortable with Shane because he sees Shane as someone who is dangerous. Andrea her personal struggle. Glenn getting character development, Daryl getting character development, the interactions between each of these characters, because just about all these characters are going to continue to be important. Because in the first season, a lot of people die, quite frankly. A lot of the group that we had initially been with either dies or goes off somewhere else. Here, this is a static group that we are going to be sticking with for a little while. So the character interactions between them become increasingly important, and it becomes increasingly important to make these characters more developed. And in my opinion, it works very well. It is an excellent. These first 7 episodes were good. They were great, in fact, I think. The show itself is great. It deserves to be watched. It is a quality TV show that deserves to be watched, and I am glad I'm getting this opportunity to go back over it. Before, of course, the 4th season comes out. So yeah, that's about all I can say for it right now. Once again, in the next part of season 2, we will see once again the actions of this first part have consequences, and we'll see the consequences be played out in the second part. And the conflict between Rick and Shane will flare once again. And I'm pretty sure you people already know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it'll flare once again, and I will be back with you once I recap over those episodes again. And then on to season 3, and then on to the new season. So until then, this has been Luke of the Media Misfits, signing off.